Howdy all, iRix Guy here, and I wanted to follow up regarding the Sony a7 III, also commonly referred to as the Sony a7 Mark III, and wanted to provide my feedback after using it for 3 weeks. Now, as a reminder, if you haven't subscribed to my channel already and you haven't watched my previous videos, then you may not know that I used the Sony a7R II for several years. I love that camera, but the a7R II being an older camera, it had a lot of pitfalls. Poor battery life, poor autofocus. It was a great camera, but it was a camera that required a lot of trial and error to really dial in the optimal results. Now the a7 III is a different beast. So after using the a7 III for a few weeks, and again I will preface this with reminding everyone that the a7 III is 24 megapixel. It is not 42 megapixel like an a7R II that I previously used, or the a7R III. But what you get with the a7 III is an incredible autofocus system. This video right now, I'm filming in front of my green screen, but I've got it in autofocus, and I'm using an f2 aperture with a 25 millimeter lens. So I mean this thing, and I'm in Super 35 mode, so it's a 25 millimeter lens, but that's another cool feature with this camera. You can switch between APS-C and Super 35. So in essence, if you film with primes, like I do, prime lenses, lenses that don't zoom, I can switch between full frame and APS-C, and in essence, make it look more zoomed in. So that's pretty cool. This camera has been a real treat. The battery life of the a7 III is outstanding. It came with one battery and I only bought one extra battery. And there's been, I mean, an entire day in the field filming videos, there's only been one situation where I had to pop in the second battery, and when I did, I probably only used 15 or 20% of it. So it's great being able to travel with less amount of batteries in the bag. Another feature that people commonly fail to recognize that a7 III brings to the table is the USB-C. USB-C is in Charlie. That port is faster for transferring. So when you return to your studio, you're downloading your photos and or your videos, USB-C is a lot faster, noticeably faster. So it's not one of those things, well, on paper it's faster, man, but no, real world it's faster. I spend less time rather sitting around looking at my computer waiting for videos to download after I film them in the field. So that's a huge improvement. Another improvement, people like me that don't trust technology. You know, you go out, you capture a bunch of still photos and or videos, you come back to your studio, and you discover that everything's been deleted. Something has failed with that SD card. This camera has 2 SD card slots, and you can set it up in a couple different ways. You can set it up one way to where it'll continue to record using the second card if the first card becomes full. But the setting that I use, and check the link within this video's description to find my tutorials, but the setting that I use is where it writes everything to card A and card B. So should one of my 2 cards encounter something catastrophic, there's a good possibility that card 2 of 2 may not be corrupt. So all that work that I performed in the field, it's not lost because card 2 of 2 or card 1 of 2 saved me. That's a huge feature that a lot of people fail to recognize. The camera body itself, in comparison to an a7R II or an a7R III, is it'll feel very similar. But if you scrutinize the build quality, you might notice that the a7 III seems to use a little bit more plastic. On the top, the little knob that turns, it doesn't have the thing in the middle which locks it, which that was a nuisance for me with the a7R II. But the idea behind that is that you don't inadvertently turn the knob and change the setting. It's so firm anyway. I think that's something cosmetic that, you know, having to take the step to push and then turn, it didn't really add a lot of value, at least for me. So that's a visual difference that you may notice, but it's again, it's something that doesn't impact me. A lot of people say the LCD and the EVF on the a7R III are a lot better. All I got to say is if people didn't say it, I probably wouldn't notice the difference. And I can say that coming from A7R II to the A7 III, that both the LCD and the EVF look incredible. I've had no problems making sure that I'm filming what I want to film. I've had no problems seeing focus peaking when I'm filming in manual video mode, and it's just worked. It does have a touchscreen, but it is worth noting that the touchscreen on the A7 III is only touch to focus. So if you think you're going to have touchscreen for all of your menu adjustments, you're not. It's just for focus, at least at this point in time. The menu system on the A7 III is greatly improved. I've never had a problem with the previous Sony menu systems, but a lot of people have, and I think those people came from other camera brands where the menu systems, they were more accustomed to that, and when they came to Sony, they felt like it was kind of a step backwards from a menu system perspective. Menu system for me on the A7 III has been great. It's added a new feature where you can set your own menu where you add your settings. So mine, and again, check the link within this video's description, but my custom menu for my A7 III, I've got what I need. I've got format, I've got switch between APS-C and full frame, I've got, let's see what I have, change focus mode, turn touchscreen on and off. Sometimes if I film in video and I have my nose up to the back of the camera, I don't want it to inadvertently change the focus. Haven't had that problem, but some people say it's possible. So, you know, the custom menu is a huge feature. The ability to use the, multi-shoe interface devices on top. I use the same microphone for this camera that I use from A7R II. Now this video I'm filming with my lavalier mic, but most of my videos where I'm out in the field instead of in front of a green screen, you'll notice that I feel the audio is very good and it's coming from that mic. You can find that mic within this video's description. Again, the battery life, one of the most outstanding aspects of this camera. But now I'm going to switch over to the video piece. In the video piece, this entire video has been filmed in autofocus. What I'm doing right now with autofocus, with the A7R II would have been next to impossible. You would have seen all that wonkiness. And I'm filming with an f2 aperture. So watch this. I'm going to bring this remote closer to y'all. I'm going to take it away. I mean, this is in front of a green screen. This is autofocus. This is with an f2 aperture. I'm shooting this particular lens wide open. The autofocus on this camera alone makes it worthwhile. But to take it a step further, and then you really scrutinize, it's like, man, with this 4K 30, dude, A7R II, man, it was 4K 30. Why would I want to do this? Why would I want to downgrade to a base model camera, dude? I've got A7R II. I got that extra resolution, man. Well, let me tell you, if you're primarily doing video, this camera is better than the A7R II from my observations. And again, check out my hundreds of videos that I filmed on my channel with the A7R II. A lot of them look really good, but you'll notice my face on video segments, I didn't move around a lot. With the A7R II, my face on video segments, I had to use manual focus to eliminate the wonkiness. The autofocus on this thing is awesome. And also, this camera, the A7 III, is recording greater than 4K. I think it's 5K or 6K, and then it's downsampling the video to 4K. So you're getting, if you look at video, get you an A7R II, put it right beside the A7 III, film 4K video, play back that video, and notice, look for HDR, high dynamic range. Just notice the overall image quality, and I think you'll probably be like, man, how did that base model camera defeat the resolution? How did it do that? Well, when you jump to the still photo side of the house with the A7 III, you know, having 24 megapixel instead of 42, you may notice a difference there if, and I preface it with a big if, you're shooting landscapes. Landscape being you're shooting a, let's say, a field. And within that field there's a barn. You shoot it with an A7R II or an A7R III in 42 megapixel, and then you take that still photo and you crop it in post. you could probably crop in on that barn and it still look really, really sharp. 24 megapixel, like the A7 III has, you can do the same. But keep in mind, if you're primarily doing landscapes and you're, zooming within post, so you're getting a big landscape photo, and then you're zooming in on certain elements within that large landscape photo, 42 megapixels is going to provide an advantage. But if you're not zooming in within post-production, 24 megapixel is probably more than enough. And 24 megapixel is going to consume less disk space. So if you're using cloud storage plan like I use Lightroom CC, I could put a lot more photos in the cloud that are shot in 24 megapixel than photos that were shot in 42 megapixel. The autofocus system on this thing, not just for video, but for still photos, is incredible. The eye autofocus, it is spot on. A lot of people say, man, it's like, dude, they released that A9, the Sony A9. It's like it's the primo camera, dude. Well, if you look at a specs comparison between A9 and A7 III, you're going to be like, man, why is that A9 so much more expensive? And by the way, the A9 is 24 megapixels as well. It doesn't do 42. And if you jumped over to, let's say, the A7R III, then you're getting the awesome battery life like you get with the A7 III. But with the R3, you're not getting the awesome autofocus like you get with the A7 III. So for Sony to release a base model camera that is an awesome 4K video camera, an awesome stills camera that provides incredible battery life, why did they do? It's great they did that, but what is A7S III going to bring to the table? That's the big question. But yeah, now let's talk about the ugly. I tell you like it is. I'm not in one of those, I'm in a studio, I'm in my studio, and I've got my green screen, the backdrop that I filmed that, blah, blah, blah. I'm cool, man. I'm Mr. Photographer, Mr. Videographer, or whatever. I'm not going to sit here and try to doctor up a presentation. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. So I've shared with you the good. Now we're going to go the less than good, because I don't really have anything that ugly to say about this camera. Cosmetically, to look at it, it would be hard for one to tell a difference between this and an A7R III. But again, when you hold it, you'll notice it has a little bit more plastic in the body. It by no means feels cheap, but it has a little bit more plastic in the body, and it's a little bit lighter weight than the A7R III, which is an advantage. Like all of the Sony Alpha cameras so far, at least the ones that I've used, one of my biggest gripes is the LCD on the back. This video, I'm in my studio, so I've got my field monitor in my studio so I can see myself. I can see right now I'm in the middle, and now I'm kind of moving to the side of the frame. The biggest pain point with this camera is that they don't have an LCD on the back that'll pop out and flip to the side. Panasonic does that with their Lumix GH4, GH5 line. A lot of camera manufacturers do it. Even the inexpensive Sony RX100, the screen on the back will pop up so that you can see yourself face on video. Why did they not give us that luxury with this camera? But the good thing is, again, using smartphone app, I can pair A7 III with Play Memories app. Check the link within this video's description to find my tutorial on that. And I can create a glorified field monitor of sorts. So at least when I'm out in the field and I don't have my film crew, I can look at it and say, yeah, I'm in the camera's field of view. I need to step a little bit closer. I need to step a little bit further back. Maybe I need to go to the side. I've got that luxury. But it would be so much easier and so much more convenient if Sony would just create a screen on the back that would pop out to the side. Again, one of my few complaints in regards to the A7 III. This thing, I absolutely love it. And I'm sticking with this camera for a while. Now, the A7S III which at the time of posting this video has not been announced. The A7S III, it makes me wonder what they may bring to that. Now keep in mind, I'm primarily a video guy. So I mean, I shoot still photos, I use them for thumbnails, that sort of stuff. But I'm primarily a video guy. So this camera for me is awesome video. It does not do 4K 60, but it does 4K 30. And for most purposes, 4K 30 is fine. I don't do a lot of video where I retime it. So having the extra frame rate is not a huge deal for me. Something that is cool that this camera brings to the table is S&Q. Sean Connery. S&Q is, here's a bonus for y'all. Big cat. Check them out, SeanConnery.com. Enormous Maine Coon cat. Hey, Sean Connery, you want to wave? Hello. Yep. So, yeah, the S&Q, which is 120 frames per second. That's super cool if you want to shoot like a slow motion clip. But keep in mind, the S&Q 120 frames per second is not 4K. But what's cool is that S&Q mode is accessible by way of that dial on top of the camera I was talking about. The one on the A7 III, it doesn't have the lock button in the middle. It just turns, you know, with a decent amount of force. So that's cool being able to do that. Huge convenience. Now I film everything in 4K, but I do find value within using that S&Q button on occasion if I want to capture, say, a bumblebee, or check out my bumblebee video in 120 frames per second S&Q mode. But things where I want to capture slow motion, it's handy. And what I've found is that even though it's 1080, you know, it's not 4K Ultra HD, 3840 by 2160 for the S&Q, but the 1080p 120 frames per second, I can record that, drop it into a 4K video project, export the video project in 4K, and even though the rest of the video is probably going to be all 4K, the slow motion clips are 120 frames per second, 1080p. But when I export it in 4K, up converted, it still looks near 4K. I mean, it's not. It's 1920 by 1080, but it's still good. So that was cool. That was a cool discovery because I was hesitant to use S&Q. I'm like, man, I'm going to junk up this video project with 1080p footage. When I dropped it into 4K project, it up converted very well, and I mean, unless you're a videophile, you may not even notice a difference, which I was shocked by that outcome. So A7 III, I mean, I could sit here and ramble on and on, but I think the best thing to do is for me to continue to post weekly A7 III update reviews. You know, this is week number 3. I've been using A7 III for 3 weeks, and I couldn't be more happy. So ask any questions you may have. A lot of you have asked A7 III questions already, and I've been able to post video responses to a lot of those. But comment within this video's description. Comment anywhere on my social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and here, YouTube. And I'll try my best to respond face on video. Also, check the link within this video's description. You can find the A7 III, the 25mm lens that I'm using, the microphone that I'm using, the tripod that I'm using, and a whole lot more. Thanks for watching, and y'all have a good day. Hey y'all, iRick Sky here. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share. It's viewers like you that enable my channel to continue to grow. Thank you.